Can I just get everyone to turn and face the person next to you or the people next to you and have a good look at them in the eye? Don't be afraid. Okay. Because... Oh, sorry. Have you made contact with someone? Jim Hennessy, have you done it? Yeah, excellent. Okay, because that person that you've just looked in the eye actually has a bit of a dirty secret, a dirty past. And that is, according to the New South Wales EPA, at some time in their life, they have littered something somewhere, which actually means that everyone here in this room has littered. So it's a really good thing that you're here today, because it just so happens that I'm talking about littering. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm actually going to tell you of what Bankstown Council has been doing for the past 3 years to actually understand what motivates people like you to actually do the right thing and either put your rubbish in the bin or to take it away with you. So like I said, it's been going on for 3 years, and it started when my team was actually given ownership of litter. And we got everyone in the room, all of the internal stakeholders, to talk about, well, what do we do well, where are the gaps? And then if you could actually fix the problem, where would your priority areas be? And they actually mentioned it was the Georges River. So we picked 2 foreshore parks along the Georges River that are high impact parks, high profile parks. Garrison Point was one. On a weekend, we get about 400 to 500 people coming, gathering, family gatherings for picnics and barbecues. And the other one was East Hills Park, the smaller of the 2 parks, around 300 to 400 people on the weekend. Once again, family gatherings, picnics and barbecues. So we picked our sites. We were told that they were bad. Not that I didn't believe them, but I wanted an independent review. So I got a specialist in to tell me 3 things. 1, the litter counts. 2, to do some observational research. And 3, to conduct some surveys. This is what we found. The litter rates, it was high. That's taken on a Monday morning after a weekend, a busy weekend. So we were 3 times higher than Victorian averages litter counts that were done just 2 years earlier on foreshore parks. So we did have a problem. In terms of the observation, we had some serious issues with our infrastructure that was there. So we needed to do something there. And in terms of the behaviour, people were just walking away from their litter. So they were having the picnic, the barbecue, and just walking away. So that was the behaviour that we were actually dealing with. Despite all of that, from our surveys, they actually had a really strong attachment to the area. We know that because this is what they said. We want to keep it for generations. It's a lovely place to come and rest, and we use it all the time, so we must keep looking after it. So these are the words that they were telling us. So in terms of how, we actually asked them the question, well, how important is it to keep this area litter-free? 97% said they felt it was very important, not just important, very important. So then we thought, okay, well, whose responsibility is it? Is it council's responsibility? Is it the public's responsibility? Is it everyone's responsibility? 88% said it was council responsibility. You laugh. Look at this. 98% believed that it was their responsibility. So they thought it was more of their responsibility than our responsibility, which was interesting. Then when we said, what else can we do? Oh, sorry, I've jumped ahead. They said things like, council is doing an okay job, but people need to do more. Council shouldn't have to do all the cleaning. So that clarified that. But then when we said, well, what else? What else can we do? Of course, let's find people. And they were saying that as they were littering, talking to the surveyors. So this is why it's a really interesting thing to actually observe people and then talk to them, because generally what people say and what people do are 2 different things. So we took all of that information on board. We used the research that we did from the Recycle Right program. And what we decided to do is we would once again trial. We didn't want to go in with the answers. We wanted to trial different approaches so we could test it, measure it, and report on it. Now, we were going to do it for 12 weeks over the summer period because that's when these parks are heavily used. So the first thing we did was we focused on the infrastructure. For the first 3 weeks, all we did was change the infrastructure in these parks. So we put the bins in locations that we knew that the park users would use, but then also we could access and service. Whilst we did that, we also introduced prompts. Now, what we learnt about prompts and branding was 3 things from the Recycle Right program. Keep it positive. Tell me what to do. People want to be told what to do, and people want to be told the reason as to why you're asking to do something. So we tried to keep those 3 things because that's what we learnt. So we used 2 different brandings. At East Hills, it was put rubbish in the bin because it's the right thing to do. That was based on the Recycle Right program. And then at Garrison Point, we used the I Like Our Parks litter free because remember, they all said it was very important to keep the parks litter free. And then we used a series of different statements and questions, and that one says, I put my rubbish in the bin, will you? These were the prompts, the stickers that we actually put on the tables at the parks. So that's all we did for the first 3 weeks. The next week, in East Hills Park, what we did is we actually used life-size signage. And here you can see of Margot Park. She's actually sitting in the audience. That's the real Margot Park. That is actually the signage. We got 5 different signs of people holding a different waste type and put them next to a bin. And this was all about demonstrating the behaviour that we wanted to see. It was about telling me what to do. And that's all we did in those parks, in that park, for 3 weeks. At the same time that was happening, at Garrison Point, we had 2 officers working out on a Saturday and Sunday, handing out bags, having a conversation with people and giving them a bag. This was about reducing the barrier. There was no excuse. It was about providing them with a prompt. It was bright, they couldn't miss it, and it was about reciprocity. If I give you something, you should give me something in return. So we wanted to test that for 3 weeks. The next 3 weeks, we moved on to the pledge. This was about making a commitment. It was the most successful trial that we used in the Recycle Right program. However, it was the most controversial one for this program because when we started rolling it out, the staff were really scared that the community didn't want to talk to them while they were having a picnic talking about litter. But we decided to trial it anyway. Whilst that was happening at Garrison Point, we had litter pickers. Remember, the community said they also felt it was our responsibility. So it was Saturday and Sunday, we had officers, litter pickers out there, litter picking for a couple of hours, showing that we care. And the last 3 weeks across the 2 parks, we gave them what they asked for and we gave them the enforcement for 3 weeks. So, the results. What we did with the results, we had a number of different measures. We did litter counts, okay? Every Monday morning we would go in and count the litter in those 3 parks to see what was happening. The clock represents hours. We actually recorded the number of hours that the litter picking staff spent picking up litter in those 2 parks. We had conversations with people, we observed people, and we had a control site. So the control site was a site that was along the Georges River in between the 2 parks that the staff identified as not an issue, not really an issue with littering. So we decided to measure that as well. We collected baseline data 3 weeks prior to help us to see how we were tracking. These are the results. Bins and prompts. I said that this was introduced just for 12 weeks in our busiest period, Christmas. This was introduced the week before Christmas. So the litter counts went up. Okay, at Garrison Point they went up by 30%, East Hills by 23%. The amount of hours that they spent cleaning these parks on average went up by 1.9 hours at Garrison Point and 1.7 hours at East Hills. However, where we did absolutely nothing at the control site, 68% it went up for the litter count. So we know that we were starting to make a difference. In terms of the conversations and the observations, people loved the bins. They liked the fact that they were clean, they knew they could see them. In terms of the prompts and the branding, they actually liked the fact that we were not accusing them of doing something that they felt that they did not do. So we were starting to have a positive impact. Signage. This is where we saw the change. By us implementing just signage, the litter counts went down by 13%. You can see at Kelso Beach, litter counts went up by 4%. The hours went down, which is quite significant, by 1.8 hours on average. So we knew we were starting to make a difference. However, observationally, what happened? Every weekend, these signs went missing. So Margot is probably sitting in someone's lounge room as we speak. So whilst it created a buzz, probably not the most sustainable approach to move forward and to keep for a long-term effect. Then we move to the bags. You see a bigger change, an 18% reduction in litter. And then the hours, interesting enough here, the hours didn't go down a lot. Really not measurable. Half an hour on average, they were spending less. So not significant. However, we had conversations with the staff. They loved it. We even witnessed the litter pickers a couple of weeks later handing out bags that they had brought in themselves because they realised that this made a significant impact on their time. So we took that on board as well. The pledge, the most controversial one, where we thought that the community didn't want to talk to us while they were having a picnic about litter. They did, they talked to us. And what happened? 50% was a reduction in litter over that time, and a reduction of, on average, 2.3 hours. The observations and the conversations was that people wanted to talk, and people were happy to have a pledge signed. And not only were they happy to sign a pledge, they were happy to have their photo taken holding the pledge. And if they didn't want their photo taken with the pledge, they got their photo taken just of the pledge. But they also were happy to go that extra step further, and that was to actually have their photo put on a board at the park to demonstrate that they were committed to keeping this park clean. So it's just demonstrating that people do want to make a difference. Litter picking, that's when we had the staff out there litter picking. It went down on average of 13% for litter counts. And of course, the hours should have went down on the Monday morning. They went down by 3.5 hours. However, is that enough? No, because they spent 4 hours on a Saturday and 4 hours on a Sunday. So really not a significant one. Enforcement. Unfortunately, when we did this one, it rained constantly all week and all weekend. We had a few sunshine moments on the weekends, so we did have the rangers out there, but there weren't a lot of people out there. So it shows everything went down because there weren't many people in the park. So you can even see that Kelso was the first time the control site went down as well. So people just weren't out in the parks. However, what we do know is that the time that they did go out and speak to some of the people that were there, the defence mechanisms went up. People basically said, I can't understand what you're saying. So they referred to the, I guess I call it the card of, I don't understand what you're talking about. We had officers out in the park and they never experienced that barrier, that language barrier before. So what I put it down to is people actually don't like to talk to enforcement officers. But they're happy to have a conversation if you're not dressed in a ranger uniform. So they were the trials that we did over a 12-week period, over a summer period. So what did we do next? Well, we took all of those results and we decided that we were going to continue this along the foreshore parks. So we developed a plan. And the plan was, well, we kind of stole the Manly model, and that was to actually have clean park educators. So we actually employed staff to actually work on a weekend. And we got them to work on a weekend and to do the two most significant trials there, and that was making a commitment, asking for a pledge, and giving out a bag. And we were going to get them to go out there during summer, all of daylight savings, to work to see if we could make a change and make it sustainable. So that was the plan. And then we applied for funding, and we were very grateful that we received funding from the New South Wales EPA to actually do this. So what did we do? For 22 Sundays, we had staff that were out there every single Sunday talking to people. 7,243 people to be exact, in groups, 636 groups. So they have large family gatherings that come to these parks. So we recorded the amount of people that we actually spoke to. In terms of the bags, they gave out 2,803 bags to be specific, and 171 pledges were signed over those 22 Sundays. Bins, we actually went and changed the bins and we put new bins in. So they're the new bins that we put. So because we tested those where the bins were located, we knew that they worked, we knew that they weren't getting overfilled, we placed in those bins there. In terms of the results, the litter counts, well, here you go. East Hills went down by 16%, Garrison Point 3%, Lake Gilawana, which was the new park that we then added, that went up by 6%. However, if you look at the control site, same control site where we did absolutely nothing, it went up by 90%. So we know we were making a significant difference. We also know with Lake Gilawana, we weren't too happy with the actual litter count site that we were using. However, because it was what we started with, we had to continue with it. So it wasn't a real true reflection on what we were actually achieving. But that's why you actually need more than one evaluation method. So we moved to the staff hours, and here you see it for yourself. A reduction at Garrison Point by 31%, a reduction in Lake Gilawana by 40% of the hours spent. East Hills significantly higher, 66%, but that's because we had some staffing issues, so not a true indication. Let's compare the two. So you can actually see when you compare the staff reduction hours and the litter counts, we're making significant differences at these parks. Enforcement, we had to do an enforcement element as part of the EPA grant. However, zero infringements. Because basically we're dealing with the behaviour of people just walking away from their litter. So unless they're hiding behind a tree, it's really not going to, you're not going to get a lot of enforcement. So there were no enforcements issued. Surveys. So the last 2 weeks we actually surveyed the community, and basically it was clear that they believed that our parks were cleaner. They said things like this: 84% of the weekly users actually noticed a change of less litter over the past 2 years. 79% rated the parks as very clean, which is good because they all wanted them very clean. 32% of the park users had actually seen a clean park educator working on a Sunday. And 78% said the bins were in great locations that could be easily used. So they said things like, it's better than the ones we used before because you don't need to touch them. That's a big issue for bins. People don't want to touch bins in public spaces. And the number of bins is good because they're never overflowing. But I wanted one more observation, one more evaluation, and that was our own observation. And our own observation showed that outside of just the litter count areas, we would have less litter. Garrison Point, you can see the before and the after shots. We're just not getting that litter anymore, that photo that I showed right at the beginning. East Hills, and then the bins. The bins is interesting because we moved to the Cadbury top bins. They were effective, but we've moved to the new style bins. So in terms of the learnings, well, I think it's quite clear that we've actually used the same process that we used for the Recycle Right program, and we've implemented it across a different area into litter, and the process works. The process is about spend time on your research, speak to your community because this will guide your direction, and trial your different approaches because only once you trial the different approach will you know what will become sustainable moving on in the future. In terms of this approach and this project, it was key that you actually had a project owner, one team, and it was key that you engage with all the stakeholders because only once you engage with the stakeholders was it possible for you to actually sustain this and get their involvement for the whole way through. The other learning is, and we learnt this in the Recycle Right program, is the community really do want to do the right thing. But sometimes you need to remind them, sometimes you need to nudge them, and sometimes you need to help them. And everyone is happy to have a conversation, just not with a ranger. So thank you. I've got 2 more minutes, 1 more minute.